Welcome to the world of science fiction. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss new stories. Enjoy the listening. Marcus's heart raced as the descent module pierced through the atmosphere of Zeta 9. The alien world loomed below, a tapestry of azure oceans and emerald land masses. He gripped the controls tightly, his mind buzzing with a cocktail of excitement and trepidation. Touchdown in T-minus 60 seconds. The AI assistant chimed. Marcus took a deep breath, steeling himself for humanity's first encounter with extraterrestrial life. Years of training had led to this moment, yet nothing could truly prepare him for what awaited on the surface. The module touched down with a gentle thud. Marcus waited for the external sensors to confirm a breathable atmosphere before opening the hatch. A gust of warm, fragrant air rushed in, carrying scents both familiar and alien. He stepped onto the lush grass, marveling at its deep purple hue. The sky above shimmered with an iridescent quality, like the inside of an abalone shell. In the distance, a cluster of sleek, crystalline structures jutted from the landscape, unmistakably a city of advanced design. Marcus activated his universal translator and cleared his throat. "Greetings," he announced to the seemingly empty clearing. "I come in peace as a representative of Earth." A rustle from the nearby foliage caught his attention. 4 figures emerged, and Marcus's jaw dropped. They were unmistakably female, with curves that would turn heads on any planet. But their skin was a vibrant shade of blue that seemed to shimmer in the alien sunlight. The tallest of the 4, with long silver hair and piercing violet eyes, stepped forward. "Well, well," she drawled, her translator conveying a tone of amusement. "What have we here? A little pink toy from that backwater mudball?" Marcus blinked, taken aback by the unexpected hostility. I'm Marcus Chen, from Earth. We've been observing your world for some time and hope to establish peaceful contact." The silver-haired woman turned to her companions with a smirk. "Did you hear that, girls? The monkey can speak." The others tittered with laughter. A shorter alien with spiky blue hair piped up, "Ooh, can we keep him as a pet, Era? He's kind of cute in a primitive sort of way." Marcus felt his face flush. This wasn't at all how he'd imagined first contact. "I assure you," he said, trying to keep his voice steady, "Earth is far from primitive. We have much to offer in terms of scientific and cultural exchange." Era, the apparent leader, circled him slowly. Her gaze raked over his body in a way that made Marcus feel like a specimen under a microscope. "I'm sure you do, little pink man. Tell me, do all humans have such interesting protrusions?" She gestured vaguely towards his face. Marcus's hand reflexively touched his nose. "You mean my nose?" This elicited another round of giggles from the group. The one with spiky hair nudged her friend, a willowy alien with elaborate facial markings. "Nira, I think he uses it to sense pheromones. How quaint." Nira wrinkled her own smooth, barely there nose. "Disgusting. Imagine having to smell things all the time." Marcus took a deep breath, reminding himself of his training. Cultural misunderstandings were to be expected. He needed to push past the initial awkwardness and establish a meaningful dialogue. "Ladies," he said, adopting a more formal tone, "I understand this must be quite shocking for you. Rest assured, we humans are a peaceful species. We've come to learn and to share knowledge. Perhaps we could start by exchanging information about our respective worlds." Era's laughter died down, replaced by a look of cool appraisal. "Oh, you're a determined little thing, aren't you? Very well, Marcus. Show us what passes for technology on your mudball. Entertain us." Marcus nodded, grateful for the opening. He reached into his pack and pulled out a holographic projector. With a few taps, a shimmering image of Earth appeared in the air between them. "This is my homeworld," he began, zooming in on various landmarks. As you can see, we have diverse ecosystems and boring. The fourth alien, who hadn't spoken until now, interrupted. She had elaborate braids woven with glowing strands. Mia's right, ladies. Can't we just keep him as a novelty and be done with it? Era held up a hand, silencing her companion. Her eyes narrowed as she studied the hologram. Wait a moment, Denya. Look at the atmospheric composition data. It's intriguing. Marcus perked up. Yes, Earth's atmosphere is quite unique in our solar system. The balance of nitrogen and oxygen allows for combustion reactions that would be impossible in our atmosphere, Era finished, a hint of genuine curiosity creeping into her voice. For the first time, Marcus felt a glimmer of hope. He quickly brought up more scientific data, sensing he might have found common ground with at least one of the aliens. As he spoke, Era's demeanor subtly shifted. The mocking edge to her question softened, replaced by more pointed inquiries about Earth's technology and scientific advancements. The others, however, quickly grew bored. Era, Nira whined, are we really going to stand here all day listening to the monkey babble? Mia, the one with spiky hair, nodded in agreement. Yeah, I thought we were going to have some fun with him. You know, see if he does any tricks? Marcus felt his frustration rising. I'm not some sideshow attraction, he said firmly. I'm here as an equal, hoping to foster understanding between our species. Denia rolled her eyes. Oh, please, equal? You're barely more evolved than the lizard monkeys that infest our southern continent. That's enough, Era said sharply, surprising everyone. She turned to Marcus with an appraising look. You've piqued my interest, human. Perhaps you're not quite as primitive as we first assumed. Marcus relaxed slightly, grateful for the intervention. Thank you. I'd be happy to continue our discussion and answer any questions you might have about Earth. Era's lips curled into a smile that sent a shiver down Marcus's spine. It wasn't exactly warm, but it held a predatory edge that both thrilled and unnerved him. Oh, I have many questions, she purred, but I think a more hands-on approach might be in order. What do you say to a private tour of our city, Marcus? I'm sure we could learn so much from each other. Marcus hesitated. On one hand, this was exactly the kind of cultural exchange he'd hoped for. On the other, Era's tone carried undertones he couldn't quite decipher. Was this a genuine offer of diplomacy, or something else entirely? I would be honored, he said cautiously, but perhaps it would be better if we all went together. I'm sure your friends have valuable insights to offer as well. Era waved a dismissive hand. Oh, they have their own tasks to attend to. Isn't that right, ladies? The other three aliens exchanged meaningful glances. Nira spoke up, her voice dripping with innuendo. Of course, Era. We wouldn't want to interfere with your scientific inquiry. Marcus felt his cheeks burn. There was clearly subtext he was missing, but he couldn't afford to let this opportunity slip away. Very well, he said, squaring his shoulders. Lead the way, Era. I look forward to learning about your world. As they walked towards the gleaming city, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that he was walking into something far more complex than he'd bargained for. Era's occasional sidelong glances sent a mix of excitement and apprehension coursing through him. What exactly had he gotten himself into? The crystalline spires of the alien city loomed closer, their faceted surfaces refracting the light in mesmerizing patterns. Marcus marveled at the architectural precision, noting the complete absence of right angles or straight lines. Everything flowed in organic curves, as if the buildings had grown naturally from the landscape. Impressive, isn't it? Era's voice startled him from his reverie. I suppose it must seem quite advanced to someone from your world. Marcus bristled slightly at the condescension in her tone. It's certainly beautiful, he replied evenly. Though I assure you, Earth has its own architectural wonders. We've simply chosen different aesthetic paths. Era's eyebrow ridge arched in what Marcus was beginning to recognize as amusement. Is that so? Well, I look forward to you educating me on the finer points of Earth design. But first, let me show you true technological mastery. She led him to what appeared to be a solid wall of the nearest building. With a graceful wave of her hand, the surface shimmered and parted like water, allowing them to step through. Marcus gasped as they entered a vast atrium. The interior seemed to defy the laws of physics, with floating platforms and streams of light that served as pathways between different levels. Alien beings of various hues moved about their business, barely sparing a glance for the strange pink creature in their midst. "Welcome to the heart of knowledge," Era announced with a hint of pride. "This is where we store the collective wisdom of our civilization." Marcus's scientific curiosity overwhelmed his earlier trepidation. "Fascinating. How do you organize and access such vast amounts of data?" Era's lips quirked in a smile that was almost genuine. "Eager little thing, aren't you? Come, I'll give you a small demonstration, though I doubt your primitive mind will be able to fully grasp it." She led him to a glowing pedestal and placed her hand upon it. Instantly, the air around them filled with swirling holographic displays. Marcus recognized mathematical equations and scientific notation, though the specifics were beyond his comprehension. "This," Era explained, "is a simplified model of our universe's underlying structure. We've mapped the quantum foam down to the Planck scale, allowing us to manipulate reality itself." Marcus's jaw dropped. That's incredible. On Earth, we've only just begun to scratch the surface of quantum mechanics. The implications of this technology are staggering. For a moment, Era's mask of superiority slipped, replaced by genuine surprise at his understanding. You actually grasp the basics of this? Perhaps there's hope for your species yet." Encouraged, Marcus launched into an explanation of Earth's latest advancements in quantum computing and string theory. As he spoke, he noticed Era's expression shifting. The mocking edge faded, replaced by something that looked almost like respect. "I must admit," she said when he finished, "you've surprised me, Marcus. It seems there's more to you than meets the eye." Marcus felt a surge of pride. "Thank you. I hope this demonstrates that our species have much to offer each other. A cultural and scientific exchange could benefit both our worlds immensely." Era studied him for a long moment, her violet eyes unreadable. "Perhaps," she said softly. "Though I wonder, what else might we learn from each other?" The air between them suddenly felt charged with an energy Marcus couldn't quite define. Era took a step closer, invading his personal space. He caught a whiff of an alien scent, something like ozone and exotic flowers. "Tell me, Marcus," Era purred, her voice low, "are all humans as passionate about knowledge as you are?" Marcus swallowed hard, his heart racing. I suppose it varies. But yes, many of us are driven by curiosity and the desire to understand the universe." Era's hand brushed against his arm, sending a jolt through his body. "Fascinating. And what other desires drive your species?" Warning bells clanged in Marcus's mind. This was rapidly veering into dangerous territory. He took a step back, trying to regain his composure. Marcus's heart pounded as he struggled to maintain his composure. Era's touch lingered on his arm, her violet eyes boring into him with an intensity that was both thrilling and terrifying. I think there may be some cultural misunderstanding here," Marcus stammered, trying to regain control of the situation. "On Earth, we have protocols for first contact situations. It's important that we maintain professional boundaries," and Era's melodious laughter cut him off. Oh, Marcus, always so serious, aren't you? Relax. I'm merely conducting my own little experiment. After all, isn't that what scientific exchange is all about? Before Marcus could formulate a response, Era closed the distance between them. Her alien scent, a mixture of ozone and exotic flowers, overwhelmed his senses. He found himself backed against a shimmering wall, Era's lithe blue form pressed against him. "I think," she purred, her lips mere inches from his, "that it's time we conducted a more thorough examination of human physiology. For science, of course." Marcus's resolve crumbled. The combination of Era's intoxicating presence, the alien environment, and the sheer surreality of the situation overwhelmed his better judgment. With a groan of surrender, he pulled her close, their lips meeting in a kiss that sent shock waves through his entire being. What followed was a night of passion unlike anything Marcus had ever experienced. Era's alien anatomy, while similar in many ways to human females, held surprises that left him breathless and exhilarated. They explored each other with equal parts, curiosity and desire, their bodies moving together in a dance that transcended species barriers. As the alien sun began to rise, casting iridescent light through the crystal structures of the city, Marcus lay in a tangle of limbs with Era. A mix of euphoria and creeping dread battled in his mind. "That was unexpected," he murmured, still trying to process the events of the night. Era stretched languidly beside him, a satisfied smile playing on her lips. "Indeed, you've proven to be a most fascinating subject, Marcus of Earth. I look forward to many more experiments." The days that followed passed in a blur for Marcus. He found himself caught in a whirlwind of diplomatic meetings, cultural exchanges, and clandestine encounters with Era. Despite his initial reservations, he couldn't deny the growing connection between them. It wasn't until nearly 2 weeks into his stay on Zeta 9 that Marcus began to notice something odd. Era's friends, Nira, Denya, and Mia, had started treating him differently. Gone were the mocking jabs and dismissive looks. Instead, they regarded him with a mixture of curiosity and something that almost looked like respect. One evening, as Marcus sat with the 4 alien women in a luxurious lounge overlooking the city, Nira leaned in close. "So, Marcus," she said, her voice low and sultry, "Era's been keeping you all to herself, hasn't she? Don't you think it's time you shared some of that Earth culture with the rest of us?" Marcus nearly choked on his drink. What?" Mia giggled, her spiky hair seeming to bristle with excitement. "Oh, come on. We've all heard about your cultural exchanges with Era. It's only fair that we get to experience it too, for science, of course." Dania nodded in agreement, her elaborate braids swaying. After all, a proper study requires multiple data points, doesn't it? Marcus's mind reeled. He looked to Era for help, but found only amusement in her violet eyes. "Don't look so shocked, Marcus," Era purred. "I told you we Zetans have a very open approach to scientific inquiry. Besides, I'm curious to see how you handle multiple subjects." What followed was a week of passionate encounters that pushed the boundaries of both Marcus's stamina and his understanding of interspecies relations. Each of the alien women brought her own unique approach to their experiments, leaving Marcus simultaneously exhilarated and exhausted. As the days passed, however, Marcus couldn't shake a growing sense of unease. This wasn't what he had come to Zeta 9 for. He was supposed to be establishing diplomatic relations, not engaging in interstellar liaisons. The guilt gnawed at him, even as he found himself unable to resist the alien women's charms. It all came to a head nearly a month into his stay. Marcus was in the midst of a formal meeting with Zetan officials when Era burst into the room, her usual composure shattered. "Marcus," she gasped, her blue skin several shades paler than normal. We need to talk. Now." Excusing himself, Marcus followed Era to a private chamber. He found Nira, Denya, and Mia already there, all looking equally shaken. "What's going on?" Marcus asked, a sense of dread settling in his stomach. Era took a deep breath, her violet eyes meeting his with an intensity that made him shiver. "Marcus, there's no easy way to say this, so I'll just say it. We're pregnant. All of us." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Marcus staggered, gripping a nearby table for support. That's impossible. We're different species. How could this happen?" Nira stepped forward, her usual playful demeanor replaced by somber seriousness. "It seems that human and Zetan biology are more compatible than we ever imagined. Our scientists are baffled, but the evidence is undeniable." "We're carrying hybrid offspring," Denya added, her hand resting protectively over her stomach, "the first of their kind in the known universe." Marcus's mind raced, trying to process the implications of this revelation. His actions hadn't just affected him or even just these 4 women. They had the potential to change the course of 2 civilizations. What do we do now?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Mia let out a nervous laugh. "Well, I guess that depends on you, doesn't it? Are you ready to be a father 4 times over?" As the gravity of the situation settled over him, Marcus realized that his mission of peaceful first contact had just become infinitely more complicated. The future of Earth-Zetan relations now rested not just on diplomatic negotiations, but on the unborn children growing within these 4 alien women. With a deep breath, Marcus straightened his shoulders. Whatever came next, he knew one thing for certain: nothing would ever be the same again. The news of the unprecedented pregnancy spread through Zeta 9 like wildfire, igniting a firestorm of controversy that threatened to consume everything Marcus had worked for. He stood before the Zetan High Council, their alien faces a mixture of shock, curiosity, and barely concealed outrage. "Human," the chief counselor's voice boomed, his translator struggling to convey the depth of his emotion. "Do you understand the gravity of what you've done?" Marcus swallowed hard, acutely aware of the 4 blue-skinned women standing behind him. "Counselor, I assure you this was not my intention. We had no idea our species were compatible in this way." Era stepped forward, her usual confidence tempered by a newfound vulnerability. "Honored Council, I take full responsibility for initiating this experiment. The human cannot be held solely accountable." A murmur rippled through the assembled crowd. Marcus shot Era a grateful look, surprised by her sudden defense. The chief counselor's eyes narrowed. "Regardless of intention, the fact remains that we now face an unprecedented situation. These hybrid offspring could pose a threat to the very fabric of our society." "Or," interjected another counselor, her voice tinged with excitement, "they could represent the next step in our evolution. Think of the potential." The chamber erupted into heated debate. Marcus's head spun as he tried to follow the rapid-fire alien dialogue. Phrases like genetic contamination and evolutionary leap were thrown around with increasing fervor. Suddenly, a commotion at the back of the chamber caught everyone's attention. A group of Zetans in elaborate robes pushed their way forward, led by a tall figure with undulating head tentacles. "Heretics!" the leader shouted, pointing an accusing finger at Marcus and the 4 women. "This abomination goes against all our sacred teachings. The prophecies speak of such a contamination. It will bring nothing but ruin." Another faction surged forward, these dressed in the sharp attire of what Marcus assumed were scientists or academics. "Nonsense," their spokesperson countered. "This is an unprecedented opportunity for genetic advancement. We cannot let superstition stand in the way of progress." The chamber descended into chaos. Marcus felt a hand on his arm and turned to see Nira, her eyes wide with fear. "Marcus," she whispered, "I don't think it's safe for us here anymore." He nodded grimly, scanning the room for potential exits. But before they could move, the chief counselor's voice cut through the din. "Silence!" he roared, the force of his command reverberating through the chamber. "This situation requires careful consideration. Until we can determine the full implications of these pregnancies, the human and the affected females will be placed under protective custody." Marcus's heart sank. "Protective custody? You mean imprisonment?" The chief counselor's alien features twisted into what might have been a sympathetic expression. "Think of it as a precautionary measure for your own safety as well as ours." As they were led away by guards, Marcus caught Era's eye. The look they shared spoke volumes. Whatever came next, they were in this together. The days that followed were a blur of medical examinations, interrogations, and tense confinement. Marcus paced the small apartment that served as their gilded cage, his mind racing with possibilities and fears. Era watched him from her perch on a sculpted chair, her hand absently rubbing her still flat stomach. "You're going to wear a hole in the floor if you keep that up," she quipped, a shadow of her old humor creeping into her voice. Marcus paused, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "How can you be so calm? We're prisoners, Era. And out there," he gestured to the window overlooking the alien cityscape, "half the planet wants us dead, while the other half wants to dissect us." Era rose gracefully, moving to stand before him. "And the other half?" she asked, a hint of playfulness in her tone. Despite everything, Marcus felt a smile tugging at his lips. "That's three halves, Era." She shrugged, a very human gesture she'd picked up from him. "Maybe Zetan math is different from Earth math. The point is, not everyone out there is against us. We have allies." As if on cue, the door slid open, revealing Nira, Dania, and Mia. They entered quickly, their faces a mixture of excitement and apprehension. "We've got news," Mia announced, her spiky hair seeming to bristle with energy. Dania nodded, her elaborate braids swaying. "The scientific community is in an uproar. They're demanding access to study our pregnancies. And the religious factions are calling for our immediate execution," Nira added dryly. "So, the usual." Marcus sank onto a nearby couch, his head in his hands. "This is a nightmare. I came here to establish peaceful relations between our worlds, not spark an interplanetary crisis." Era sat beside him, her cool blue hand finding his. "Perhaps this is exactly what was needed to truly bring our worlds together. Nothing unites like a common cause or a common enemy." Marcus looked up, meeting her violet eyes. He saw in them a strength and determination that rekindled his own resolve. "You're right," he said, straightening. "We need a plan. A way to show both our peoples that this isn't a threat, but an opportunity." The five of them huddled together, their voices low as they began to strategize. As the alien sun set outside their window, casting the room in shimmering, otherworldly light, Marcus felt a glimmer of hope. They were creating something entirely new, not just in terms of their unborn children, but in the bonds forming between them. Weeks passed, marked by a growing tension both within their confinement and in the world outside. Marcus's body clock struggled to adjust to the longer Zetan days, leaving him in a constant state of mild jet lag. But that was the least of his worries. The women's pregnancies progressed at an alarming rate, their bodies changing in ways that baffled both Zetan and human medical science. Era, always the first to face challenges head-on, embraced the changes with a mix of scientific fascination and maternal pride. "Feel this," she said one evening, grabbing Marcus's hand and placing it on her swollen belly. A series of rapid movements pulsed against his palm, unlike anything he'd felt before. "Is that—" he began, his voice filled with wonder. Era nodded, a rare, genuine smile lighting up her face. "Our child. He or she seems to have inherited your restless nature." Marcus laughed, a sound that felt foreign after weeks of stress and uncertainty. "Let's hope they've inherited your brains and beauty to balance it out." A comfortable silence fell between them, broken only by the soft sounds of the other women sleeping nearby. In moments like these, Marcus could almost forget the precariousness of their situation, but reality had a way of intruding. The next morning brought news that shattered their fragile peace. "They're coming for us," Nira announced, bursting into the common area where they'd gathered for breakfast. Her usual cool demeanor was shaken, fear evident in her eyes. Marcus was on his feet in an instant. "Who? The council?" Nira shook her head. "Worse. A radical faction has broken away from the main religious group. They're calling themselves the Purifiers, and they've vowed to cleanse Zeta-9 of our abominations." Panic rippled through the room. Mia clutched her swollen belly protectively, while Denya began pacing, her braids swaying agitatedly. Era, ever the voice of reason, cut through the chaos. "How much time do we have?" "Not much," Nira replied grimly. "Our inside sources say they're mobilizing now. The official security forces are scrambling to respond, but they might not make it in time," Marcus finished, his mind racing. He turned to Era, seeing in her eyes the same determination he felt. "We need to get you all out of here, somewhere safe." Era nodded, already moving towards the hidden panel where they'd stashed emergency supplies. "I know a place, an old research facility in the mountains. It's isolated, defensible." Marcus grabbed a bag, quickly stuffing it with medical supplies and nutrient packs. "It'll have to do. But how do we get there? We're still under guard." A sly smile spread across Mia's face, her earlier fear replaced by a familiar, mischievous glint. "Leave that to me. I didn't spend my youth sneaking out of the education centers without learning a few tricks." What followed was a daring escape that would have made any action hero proud. Mia's tricks turned out to involve a combination of hacked security systems, improvised smoke bombs, and a stolen hover vehicle that none of them really knew how to pilot. As they sped away from the city, alarms blaring in the distance, Marcus couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of it all. Here he was, a diplomat turned fugitive, fleeing across an alien landscape with 4 pregnant women who, just months ago, had looked at him like he was some sort of inferior species. "What's so funny?" Era shouted over the wind, her hair whipping wildly as she clung to the vehicle's controls. Marcus shook his head, grinning despite the danger. "Just thinking about how I'm going to explain all this in my mission report." Era's laughter joined his, a moment of lightness in the chaos. But their mirth was short-lived. A series of sleek, ominous-looking craft appeared on the horizon behind them, gaining rapidly. "The Purifiers," Nira gasped, her face pale. "They found us." Marcus's mind raced, assessing their options. The mountain facility was still hours away, and their stolen vehicle was no match for the pursuer's speed. "There!" Denya shouted, pointing to a narrow canyon cutting through the rocky landscape ahead. "We can lose them in there." Era nodded grimly, steering the hover vehicle towards the treacherous passage. "Hold on tight, everyone. This is going to get bumpy." As they plunged into the canyon, laser fire from the pursuing craft sizzling past them, Marcus felt a surge of protective instinct unlike anything he'd experienced before. These women, Era, Nira, Denya, and Mia, and the children they carried were his responsibility now, his family. With grim determination, he turned to face their pursuers, improvising a weapon from the vehicle's spare parts. He might not be a soldier, but he'd be damned if he'd let anyone harm his newfound loved ones. The chase that ensued would be talked about for generations on Zeta-9, a lone, rickety hover vehicle carrying the most controversial passengers in planetary history, outmaneuvering sleek military craft through twisting canyons and treacherous terrain. As laser blasts lit up the alien sky and the wind howled around them, Marcus realized that his mission of peaceful first contact had evolved into something far more personal and profound. Whatever the outcome, he knew his life and the future of both Earth and Zeta-9 would never be the same. The canyon walls blurred past as Era piloted their battered hover vehicle with a skill that belied her lack of experience. Marcus clung to the makeshift weapon he'd cobbled together, his eyes darting between the treacherous path ahead and the pursuing purifier crafts. "We can't keep this up forever," Nera shouted over the wind, her face etched with worry. "The vehicle's energy reserves are critically low." Marcus's mind raced. They needed a plan, and fast. Suddenly, inspiration struck. "Era!" he called out. "That research facility you mentioned, does it have a communication array?" Era nodded, her violet eyes narrowing in understanding. "Yes, but it's old technology. Why?" A grim smile played across Marcus's lips. "Because I think it's time we took our story public. If we can't outrun them, we'll outmaneuver them with the truth." As if on cue, the hover vehicle sputtered, its engines whining in protest. Era guided them into a concealed alcove, the pursuing craft screaming past overhead. "We're out of options," Dania panted, her hand protectively cradling her swollen belly. "It's now or never." Marcus nodded, his resolve hardening. "All right, here's the plan." What followed was a daring trek across the alien landscape. The five of them moved as quickly as the women's pregnancies allowed, using the rocky terrain to conceal their movements. Marcus's diplomatic training had never prepared him for anything like this, but a newfound well of strength and determination drove him forward. As they crested a final ridge, the research facility came into view, a squat, utilitarian structure nestled against the mountainside. "There it is," Era breathed, a mixture of relief and apprehension in her voice. "Our last hope." They approached cautiously, wary of traps or hidden defenses. But the facility appeared to be truly abandoned, a relic of a bygone era of Zetan scientific exploration. Inside, layers of dust-coated advanced equipment that Marcus could only guess at the purpose of. But his attention was focused solely on one thing, the communications array. "It's been years since this was used," Mia muttered, her fingers dancing over the controls with surprising dexterity. "But I think, yes, we've got power." Marcus stepped up to the transmitter, his heart pounding. This was it, their one chance to change the narrative, to appeal to the better nature of both their peoples. He took a deep breath and began to speak. "People of Zeta-9, people of Earth, my name is Marcus Chen, and I come to you not as a diplomat, not as a human, but as a father-to-be of children who represent the future of both our worlds." His words flowed with a passion and eloquence that surprised even him. He spoke of the fear and prejudice that had driven them to this point, but also of the hope and potential that their unborn children represented. He challenged both societies to look beyond their differences and see the beauty in this unprecedented melding of two species. As he spoke, something remarkable happened. The facility's long-dormant systems came to life, broadcasting not just his voice but holographic images of their harrowing journey. The people of Zeta-9, and thanks to the powerful array, the people of Earth watched in real time as their story unfolded. They saw the tender moments between Marcus and the four women, the fear and excitement as they discovered the pregnancies, the daring escape from those who would harm them, and most powerfully, they saw the love and protective instinct that had driven Marcus to risk everything for his newfound family. As Marcus's impassioned speech came to an end, A deafening silence fell over the facility. For a moment he feared it had all been for nothing. Then the communication array crackled to life. Messages began pouring in from all over Zeta 9, and even from Earth. Messages of support, of understanding, of hope for this new chapter in interspecies relations. Era's cool hand slipped into his, squeezing gently. "You did it," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "You changed everything." The days that followed were a whirlwind of activity. The Zetan government, bowing to overwhelming public pressure, called off the pursuit and granted Marcus and the 4 women protected status. Scientists and medical professionals from both worlds converged on the facility, eager to study and assist with the unprecedented pregnancies. As the women's due dates approached, Marcus found himself at the center of a media frenzy unlike anything either world had ever seen. But through it all, his focus remained on Era, Nira, Denia, and Mia, and the miraculous lives growing within them. One particularly tense evening, as Era paced their shared quarters, her swollen belly seeming to defy gravity, Marcus approached her with a tentative smile. "Credit for your thoughts?" he asked, using the Zetan phrase he'd picked up. Era paused, her violet eyes meeting his. "I was just thinking about how much has changed. When we first met, I thought you were nothing more than a primitive curiosity. And now—" Marcus chuckled, wrapping his arms around her as best he could with her protruding stomach between them. "And now you're carrying my alien love child? Funny how life works out." Era's laughter, a sound that never failed to warm his heart, filled the room. "Indeed, though I still maintain that Zetan biology is superior, our children will simply benefit from your quaint human traits." "Oh, really?" Marcus raised an eyebrow, a mischievous glint in his eye. "Care to test that theory?" Their playful banter was interrupted by a sharp gasp from Era. Her eyes widened as she looked down at the puddle forming at her feet. "Marcus," she breathed, a mixture of excitement and fear in her voice. "I think it's time." The next few hours were a blur of activity. Medical teams rushed to prepare for the first-ever birth of a human Zetan hybrid. Marcus found himself shuttling between Era's side and checking on the other women, all of whom had gone into labor within hours of each other. As the first cries of new life filled the air, Marcus felt a surge of emotion unlike anything he'd ever experienced. He looked down at the tiny being in Era's arms, unmistakably alien with its blue-tinged skin, yet with eyes that were undeniably his own. "She's perfect," Era whispered, her usual composure cracking as tears of joy streamed down her face. Marcus could only nod, too overwhelmed to speak. One by one, the other women gave birth, each child a unique blend of human and Zetan features. As he held his daughter, their daughter, Marcus marveled at the miracle they had created. The news of the successful births spread across both worlds like wildfire. What had once been seen as a potential threat was now hailed as a new dawn for both species. The children became symbols of hope, of the potential for harmony between different peoples. Months passed, and the day of the official presentation ceremony arrived. Marcus stood on a stage before a sea of faces, both blue-skinned Zetans and a delegation from Earth. Era, Nira, Denia, and Mia stood beside him, each cradling their precious bundles. As Marcus stepped up to the podium, he felt the weight of 2 worlds on his shoulders, but as he looked out at the expectant faces, he also felt a surge of hope for the future. "Friends, colleagues, fellow beings of this vast universe," he began, his voice strong and clear. "Today, we stand at the threshold of a new era. These children represent not just the union of 2 species, but the infinite potential that lies in embracing our differences." His speech, broadcast to billions across 2 worlds, spoke of the challenges they had faced and overcome. He talked about the fear and prejudice that had nearly torn them apart, but also of the love and understanding that had ultimately prevailed. As he concluded, Marcus gestured to the 4 women and their children. Let these little ones be a reminder to us all that the universe is vast and full of wonders, and that our greatest strength lies in our diversity. The applause was thunderous, a standing ovation that seemed to shake the very foundations of the building. As Marcus stepped back, Era moved forward, their daughter cradled in her arms. "People of Zeta 9, people of Earth," she said, her voice carrying the authority she'd always possessed, but now tempered with a new warmth. "We offer you our children as a bridge between our worlds. May they grow to be the ambassadors of a future where the stars themselves are no longer a barrier, but a road to new understanding." One by one, each woman presented her child, speaking of her hopes for the future. The ceremony concluded with a symbolic gesture, a mixing of earth soil and Zeton crystal, representing the joining of their 2 worlds. As the official proceedings ended and the crowds began to disperse, Marcus found a quiet moment with Era. They stood on a balcony overlooking the Zeton capital, their daughter sleeping peacefully in Era's arms. "So," Marcus said, a hint of his old humor creeping into his voice, "was this the result you expected when you decided to experiment with the primitive human?" Era's laugh was soft, mindful of the sleeping child. "Hardly, but I must admit the results have exceeded all expectations." Marcus wrapped an arm around her, marveling at how natural it felt now. "And where do we go from here? Back to Earth? Stay on Zeta 9. Era's gaze turned to the star-filled sky above them, a vista of 2 suns and 3 moons that still took Marcus's breath away. "Why choose?" she asked, a familiar glint of adventure in her eyes. "We have a whole universe to explore, and a new generation to show it to." As they stood there, bathed in the light of alien stars, Marcus felt a profound sense of peace settle over him. His mission of first contact had evolved into something far greater than he could have ever imagined. He looked down at his daughter, her tiny hand curled around his finger. In her face he saw the future, not just for himself or for Era, but for 2 entire worlds, a future of unity, of exploration, of endless possibility. "You're right," he said softly, pressing a kiss to Era's temple. "The universe is waiting, and we've got one hell of a story to tell." As if in agreement, their daughter cooed softly in her sleep. Above them, the stars twinkled with promise, beckoning them towards a future where the boundaries between worlds and species were just the beginning of a grand adventure.